There is a critical level on SPY at 730 where big investors and traders are putting sell orders because that's where they believe the market will top this year for a move back to the downside. However, with new AI news, Iran news, and most importantly, the big Mag 7 companies reporting earnings this week, is this true and what should we be looking out for? In this video, I'm going to explain everything I'm looking for this week to be prepared for the markets with current news events, key levels, and the exact trade theses that I'll be looking out for this week. And if you don't know me, I've been trading for 7 years. I have a major in finance and a minor in economics. And in this video, I'll explain the key details 90% of traders miss out on and exactly how pro traders can exploit this behavior. All right, so a quick portfolio update for April so far. This was a swing trade that I took this week on NVIDIA, which was in about an $18,000 swing trade. You can see the live login, of course, here. Remember, I've been trading for 7 years. Trading's not a get rich quick scheme, but in this video, we'll talk about exactly how I was able to capture a trade like that and how I gave you the thesis last week in order to actually execute my own trade myself. So major news right now is the S&P 500 is at all-time highs. Right now, we're at about 714 on the SPY, but why are we at all-time highs? Here's a couple headlines that I want you guys to read to understand, even though we're at all-time highs, how is this market pushing up? The first headline, the US housing market is at the most unaffordable level in history. The second one, AI companies represent 45% of S&P 500. Now you may be thinking, how is this a positive or negative headline? It's because all companies are investing into AI. Typically, when you see a market move very aggressively to the upside right now, it's because of the news catalyst that the company invested in AI. As we can see, Google is to invest up to $40 billion into an AI company, and it does have earnings this week. So in this video, not only will I be sharing the key levels and trade thesis that I'll be looking at this week, but most importantly, I'll also talk about the names that have earnings as well. And finally, Meta just laid off 8,000 people, and that's about 10% of its entire workforce, simply because they are trying to replace their workforce with AI. Now, if you don't understand what this means, it simply means AI will continue to take more jobs. The more jobs AI takes, the less disposable income the overall consumer has. And because of this main fact right here, that the housing market is the most unaffordable level in history, well, this will be even bigger and even more emphasized because the less discretionary income the average person has, housing will only be more unaffordable. Basic necessities will be unaffordable. And even though all of this is happening in the background, which 90% of traders simply don't even know that it's happening because all they're looking at is the SPY and every market moving to the upside very aggressively within the last couple weeks. And because AI is such a big deal right now, a lot of people are often calling it a bubble. Now, there's a lot of comparison with the AI bubble and the dot-com bubble. If you don't know about the dot-com bubble, SPY dropped significantly and it took it almost 10 years to fully recover back up into all-time highs. However, AI currently is being called 17 times larger than the dot-com bubble. And this is exactly why you need to understand exactly what's going on in this market and be prepared on how to trade, because this channel has not only traders watching, but also investors watching as well. So in this video, I'll explain exactly what all this news means for the names that we trade and my long-term outlook and short-term outlook for this week as well. If we look at our market outlook for news events this week specifically, we do have FOMC on Wednesday. This is at 2:30 p.m. Eastern. Therefore, I do believe Monday and Tuesday are going to be a little bit more choppier days in terms of day trading, just because the market's going to be waiting for Wednesday FOMC. After that, we do have 8:30 red folder news on Thursday as well, and then really nothing after that. So for us this week, the biggest thing we're looking out for is FOMC on Wednesday at 2:30 p.m. Eastern. This is the news catalyst that you want to be waiting for. For myself personally, I do believe the market will be most likely a little bit more choppier this week until Wednesday. After Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, I think we can get a better trend once the FOMC is done, once we have a couple earnings, which I'll show you in this video as well. And therefore, I'm going to be a little bit more defensive coming into Monday and Tuesday, and I'll be a little bit more aggressive after Wednesday. In terms of how do investors feel in the market right now, we have clear greed. So last week we were in greed and now we're in greed again, 67 and 66. Remember, we were in extreme fear for the past couple months. However, now we are going back from extreme fear to greed. And I talked about that in my previous videos as well. If you haven't subscribed to this channel, because I make these videos every single week, make sure to do so. In terms of rate cuts, and if you don't understand why this is important, this helps the market go back to the upside if we do get rate cuts. However, I don't believe we're going to get rate cuts until October of this year. And that's exactly why that's not really a critical factor that I'll be looking too deeply into this week. However, something we do have to look at this week is going to be the earnings. We have major earnings on a lot of the Mag 7 names, and I I will be talking about the exact key levels and thought process on what I want to do for these names as well in terms of trading them this week. However, what are the main ones that we want to be looking for? Well, on Wednesday, we have Microsoft, Amazon, Meta, and this was supposed to say Google, not Apple. Apple's on Thursday. We have Microsoft, Amazon, Meta, and Google on Wednesday. That is reporting earnings. And on Thursday, we have Apple. So those are the key names that I'll be looking out for this week in terms of earnings. I'll talk about the exact key levels that I'm going to be looking for and the exact trade thesis that I'll be looking for this week specifically. So with that being said, now that you understand all the news catalysts and what you should be looking out for this week, let's go over to the chart so I can explain exactly my thought process coming into the week. All right, so let's get right into the chart. So last week I told you guys on SPY, this is once again the S&P 500, and I talked about how we have this gap fill down here. However, SPY also has a small gap fill on the daily time frame all the way up here at 705s, and I said I wanted a retest of that before the next leg to the upside. That's exactly what SPY did. So if you watched my video last week, you could have seen that the retest happened right at this gap fill around 702.97s, and SPY then came back up into all-time highs. I do believe because we are at all-time highs right now and we have earnings, I believe this week we're going to have a little bit more consolidation. I don't think we're going to rip back up into more all-time highs. I do think we need some sort of pullback after such an aggressive move. So I think we're going to have a little bit more consolidation. I'm still going to be, of course, overall bullish on SPY. So my thought process will always be bullish on SPY unless we break back below this key area here, which is 696.04. So if SPY breaks below 696.04s, then I'll lean a little bit more bearish. However, until then, I am still extremely bullish on SPY, just a little bit more neutral this week because I do believe we had a very, very big move for the last couple of weeks here on SPY. In terms of QQQ, once again, gave you guys that thought process, right? We had that daily gap. I wanted the retest of that daily gap for continuation. That's exactly what we got. We got a nice retest, 2 candles holding and big buyer stepping in on QQQ. This one went up from almost 643s here to 664s. So very nice and big push up on QQQ. I do believe this one once again needs a little bit of a pullback as well. I think Q's a solid pullback on Q's now for continuation is going to be this down close candle right here. So these down close candles from 21 of April, you can mark this out, and this is kind of the retest that I'd be looking at this week for Q's if it does want to pull back. Now Q's can continue to push up as well aggressively if the market and the tech names continue to push up, especially if we have good earnings on some of the names that I'm going to show you later in this video. However, for Q's, a healthy pullback would be back into this down close candle around 648s for continuation back to the upside. In terms of Apple, I gave you this 248 buy zone in January. If you were able to use this buy zone, that's great. However, if not, then we do have a couple other opportunities here on Apple in terms of trades that I can potentially be looking for this week. So last week, once again, I said Apple that retest back into this 266.55 for continuation. Perfect retest. On Tuesday, we got that retest. Wednesday, we rebounded right off the level that I gave on my Saturday outlook. And we can see this one came right up into our 275.95 level perfectly. And now it's kind of consolidating. So I do think this week with Apple, I would personally only trade Apple above this key area. So I would like the Apple break and retest above. However, I would not be surprised if Apple just consolidates with the other names as well. So I'm not going to be extremely bullish on Apple unless we break above 275.95 retest for continuation. And this one does have room up into all-time highs if that does happen. For Tesla, we finally broke out of this channel formation. Last week, I said there's 2 different opportunities Tesla can give. One is if we come back into this retest area, we can retest for continuation back up into 416.22s. Or the second one is we just come all the way back down and this is a fake out channel break, which is very likely as well. And once again, you can rewatch my Saturday video from last week to understand all these different concepts that I talked about. However, as we can see on Tesla, this one did come back down. It ended up holding this key area. This one has a lot of consolidation. However, we did already have earnings on Tesla. So because we had earnings on Tesla, this is going to be a name that I will be looking at this week to play potentially back to the upside. So if Tesla can hold above 369.23s, this is going to be a very low risk entry for a move back to the upside that I'm going to be potentially keeping an eye out on. However, if Tesla does break back below this level, right? So basically if it breaks below the 23rd of April candle, then I'll be looking for more bearish price action all the way back down into 343.68. So Monday and Tuesday are going to be a little bit bigger factors for Tesla. I'm simply looking for a previous day high break. If we can get that, we'll look for a move back up into 416s. If we don't and we get a break back below the 23rd of April candle, I'll be looking for a move back into 357.99s and this key level down here of about 343.68. On AMD, I did want to pull back on AMD this week for continuation. However, However, this name is extremely bullish, and AMD does have earnings coming up on May 5th. So we do have a little bit of time for AMD earnings. This one does have a couple gap fills. So I would not be surprised if AMD does have a little bit more consolidation this week. Once again, look at how big of a move this had. It makes sense if it does consolidate for a bit. And what I would be looking for is going to be that pullback entry on AMD for 310s essentially for any sort of continuation. But AMD needs to hold 310s for me. This is going to be the bullish area. If it can have this nice pullback, I'll be looking at not only swing trades, but day trades as well off of this area for continuation back to the upside, as it's very bullish. And NVIDIA. Now on NVIDIA, this is a name that I traded this week. I took a swing trade on NVIDIA, and the reason I did that is because above 199s, you can see we broke above, we consolidated right at this level, holding this area, and this was a really nice hold. So I knew if NVIDIA can hold this area, it has room back up into all-time highs because AMD is pushing up very aggressively as well, and these names are very correlated. And because of this, I actually ended up buying an NVIDIA swing for a move back up into 212s, and we got a very nice big up close candle here, and I was able to scale some of my profits here as well for about an $18,000 trade. You can see this one was a break and retest, and remember, on this channel, I gave you guys this exact trade thesis that I would be looking out for this week. If we broke above this previous 199 level, retested, as we can see here, we broke above, we retested / consolidated, then I would be looking for the next leg up. And that's exactly what I executed for myself for this NVIDIA trade back to the upside. For NVIDIA, I'd like it to hit all-time highs. And then after that, I do believe we can either get two scenarios. One is just going to be the break and retest of the all-time highs level for continuation. The second one is going to be a little bit more consolidation because of all the different earnings we have in FOMC this week. So I wouldn't be surprised if we do see some consolidation on this name as well. In terms of Palantir, this is a name that has earnings coming up May 4th. This one is in range. I talked about how if Palantir does reject 148.32s, we're simply going to stay in range. That's exactly what it's doing. I'm not too interested in this name this week specifically. I'd only be interested if it breaks back above 148.32s. If it doesn't, I'm not really looking to day trade or swing trade this back to the upside or to the downside because it is clearly in range from 148.32s to 127.48s. I am only interested in Palantir if it breaks above 148.32s with a big up close candle, something like this where we can see on February 3rd, this green candle up here. If we can break above with strong price action, then I'd be looking for 165.15s. But if it can't do that, then I'm simply just not going to trade this name this week specifically. And now let's get into some of the earning names. So we have Meta. This one has earnings on the 29th of April. We can see this one is actually a little bit more neutral in my personal opinion. We can see it's in this kind of consolidation phase from October 30th. We consolidated. We try to have a big move up because of earnings, but then we came right back into consolidation, broke below, came back in consolidation. We're still in consolidation to this day. So for myself on Meta, if earnings are good, I would like the break above 665s, break above, retest, continuation back up into 659s. If earnings aren't strong, then this one can have a move all the way back down into 582.25s. Once again, if the earnings are on the 29th of April, I will not be trading Meta until after earnings. So any name that I do trade for earnings, it will typically be one day after earnings. So the day after earnings, so because once again, I do trade options, so I don't want the IV to be too high for when I do trade those option contracts. In terms of Microsoft, this one is near a support level. It's still technically bearish on Microsoft. We do see some buyers stepping in, but technically right now we are still bearish because we're below this key area of 444s. I would like Microsoft, if it breaks back above this area, then I'll be a little bit more bullish on it. If Microsoft does break below 412.28s, then of course I'm going to be bearish on this name. It does have room back down into 384s. This earnings is on the 29th of April as well. So I'll be waiting for earnings before I make any sort of decision on this. And remember, I talk about my thought process and thesis much more in depth in the accelerator, where I talk about these trades in real time to help traders understand and learn what I'm thinking in real time. And of course, we have Google. Now, Google does have earnings on the 29th as well. And we also talked about in the beginning of this video how Google's about to invest billions of dollars into AI as well. This one is coming up near all-time highs. If Google has good earnings, I would like to break above this all-time highs level, retest for continuation. Google has room all the way back up into 380s. However, if Google rejects this all-time highs level, then this one has clear room back down into this red box, which is around this 311 level. So 319 to 311. So if Google does reject all-time highs, clear move back down into 311s for myself. However, if Google does break above, then I'm looking for the retest of this 348 level for continuation back up into 380s 80s on Google. Amazon is another name that has been showing a lot of strength recently. As we can see with the daily chart, we are coming back up into all-time highs on Amazon. You can see this one's actually breaking above all-time highs here as well. This one has earnings on the 29th of April. I would like a retest of Amazon for continuation. The retest would be, of course, 259.05s. If Amazon does have bad earnings, this one, because we're at all-time highs, I believe it'll come back down into 248.59s. However, if earnings are good, I think Amazon can still continue this push up very, very aggressively, as Amazon has been pushing up from almost the 27th of March all the way back to the upside here. Amazon from all the way down here has had a move of about 32% if you bought that dip in March. And that's exactly why I think that the retest opportunity on Amazon is going to be something that we need to wait for. Not only if I'm looking to invest into the name, but also if I'm looking to day trade as well. I would like some sort of retest before the next leg up, especially for a swing position. For MU, I gave you the exact thesis last week, which was the break and retest of this 437.45 for continuation. This was a really nice retest. You can see the retest opportunity came up on Monday and Tuesday. You had 2 days to essentially look for any sort of entry that was going to be low risk, and it pushed back up into all-time highs and 500s, which was my thesis on last Saturday. So make sure to actually look around the key levels and make an informed decision based off of the price action. If you don't know how to read price action, I have a full in-depth video for free on my main channel, Scarface Trades. However, we can see strong price action, buyer stepped in. Now the next retest level is going to be 471.35. So I would like the retest back into 471.35s for continuation to 500 and above on MU. This one doesn't have earnings for a little while, but because of how strong the semiconductors are, I would like this one to have continuation back to the upside. But this one is going to be a little bit more reliant whether AMD and Nvidia can continue this push back to the upside as well. For Bitcoin, I talked about this as well. This one is still in range. I would like the retest of Bitcoin. Remember, I've been saying this for multiple months now. I personally would like Bitcoin at 55,000 for a buy area. However, if Bitcoin does show some strong price action near 75,000, this could be a good swing trade on Bitcoin, right? So this could be a quick short-term swing trade for a move about 5% on Bitcoin. If we can get strong price action back at this retest area for continuation to 80,000, once again, that's going to be 75,000 retest that I'm going to be looking for continuation. In terms of gold, this one, I'm still bullish or neutral. I'm not bearish on gold just yet. Talked about this in my last video. However, 4,400s and 4,200s, if it breaks below this area, then I'll be a little bit more bearish. However, right now gold is a little bit more neutral. As you can see, I gave this thought process a couple weeks ago. We're consolidating above our key levels. If we can get back above 4,800 on gold, this will have another push up back up into all-time highs. However, most likely we will consolidate this week as well on gold, and this is exactly why I'm going to be a little bit more hands-off on those names. Same thing with silver. I talked about how I would like the break and retest of 78 on silver. It is coming back down into a support level of about 72, 71s. This is the exact area I would like it to hold to remain that bullish momentum, because as we can see on the daily time frame, this is making higher lows and higher highs. So we can see low down here. We then create a higher low, a higher low. This is technically a higher low for the next leg to the upside. If it breaks this higher low and comes back into this key area, it's still bullish, but it's going to be a little bit more neutral for me, where I just understand, okay, now that it did break, I'm going to have to wait for a reclaim entry if I'm looking for any bullish price action on silver back to the upside, which is of course going to be its all-time highs level. And finally, US oil. This is of course with the war news and Iran conflict. This one I talked about, if we break below this key area of 79.46, it has room all the way back down into $61. However, this one also could just be consolidating until we get a little bit more further clarification on exactly what's going on in the Middle East. And that's exactly what it's kind of doing right now. Buyers are stepping in near 94s. So we're consolidating right underneath 100, but above this 80 level. And I think this is most likely going to happen this week as well, where it's going to be a very neutral name until we get some news catalyst that will help this one move either to the upside or to the downside. So this is going to be something that I'm going to be personally a little bit more hands off with. So if you enjoyed this video and got some insights for the market this week, make sure to leave this video a like. If you have any questions, put them in the comments down below. Make sure to subscribe to the channel for more weekly outlooks and trade breakdowns, and I will see you on Monday with a brand new video.